Hey, what's up, you guys? Jeff Cohn here with another episode of the Team Building Podcast, where we interview top team leaders, broker owners, and thought leaders from across the country. Today, I have a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, myself, yours truly, Mr. Jeff Cohn, focusing on diving deep into the topic we are covering next month in the month of June, which is zero basing your marketing and overhead expenses. So I'll share a story quick. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was on a panel in front of a couple hundred agents at Boomtown Unite, being interviewed as I ran the number one team in the world at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. We were doing about 700 transactions a year. And someone was asking about profitability because, of course, there were a lot of big teams out there that we would call in the Midwest big hat, no cattle. They can put up big numbers. They get to go on stages. They get trophies. They look amazing on social media. But when it really comes down to it, they don't make money. And so someone was asking us about profitability, and I shared a stat in regards to our overhead expenses in relation to net profit, overhead, and how much agents get paid. And today I subscribed to the mindset, and then I subscribed to the mindset that when you take your gross revenue, 70% should pay agents, 10% should go to overhead, and about 20% should be net money. Now, this is contrary to the belief in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the holy grail, the Bible, the red book, if you will, of Keller. A lot of big teams have read it. I believe it says 40% should go to net profit. I think that's a little aggressive. I don't believe a team that runs the MREA model is going to be fit for scaling. And most importantly, I don't believe it can run the independent model. I think that's a dependent model team that's going to pull that much revenue with people in salaried positions, more of like a Redfin team or agents working primarily internet leads. So if you want to have a well-rounded team that's independent, dependent, and interdependent, then I think you need to be paying out about 70, maybe even more, 70% towards agents' commissions. Now, the 10% overhead is what got challenged. Somebody said, well, you only pay with 10%. How do you make $3 million and only have to pay $300,000 in overhead? It should cost more, and that's true. It should be more like 30%, maybe 25% in overhead expenses. But we learned very early on that we could offset our overhead expenses, including marketing and office space, et cetera, by charging in 2 different areas. One, marketing service agreements, which are now strategic partnerships. So we're able to generate revenue through those, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And number 2, broker fees. And I know every state has different rules around what to call them, but essentially transaction fees. So let's start with my favorite, which is strategic partnerships. And I've talked about this in the past, but I'll speak to it quickly. There's 3 ways to drive revenue from relationships. The first is vendor relationships, where someone just pays to be on a list. They pay to be on your website. They pay to have their pamphlet or be on a list of vendors in a purchase agreement, listing agreement, whatever your leave behind looks like. There's no promise that they're going to get business. There's no guarantee that there's going to be an ROI. They're just paying to be on a list. That payment might gain them access to office meetings, office events, different types of things like that. But it's not going to promise them anything. That's the least valuable relationship. You don't own anything in that relationship, of course, but it drives some revenue and it obviously helps out that vendor. The second best way to partner is a strategic partnership. And when we launched our team in 2011, we were told by Boomtown that we could offset or fully cover the cost of the Boomtown platform by creating strategic partnerships with our lenders and other vendors. So the top 5 lenders and vendors to build relationships with when it comes to both vendor relationships and strategic partnerships, because they make the most off the real estate transaction, would be, in no particular order, mortgage, insurance, title, home inspection, and home warranty. Those have been the 5 businesses that we've done business with since 2011 that have helped us to offset our marketing expenses to the tune of around $12,000 a month. Now, if you go back and listen to the podcast I recorded about 8 months ago with Greer Allen, who's the owner-founder of Boomtown, I shared in that episode that we've generated over 1 million visits to our website, and we've paid for 0 of those visits. Those have 100% been covered through strategic partnerships with mortgage, title, insurance, home inspection, home warranty companies, who we work with even yet today. Out of those million visitors, 100,000 registered. Out of the 100,000 registrants, 2.5% bought or sold property, which is a total of 2,500 sides, which generated $17 million in income. And we split that with the agents 50-50. So those are some pretty good numbers. Everything I share is backed up. to zero-based marketing expenses and be spending over $100,000 a year is pretty awesome. And to be able to do that, we obviously had to start somewhere. And so you can't expect going out of the gate at $10,000 a month in your marketing spend. You might have to come out with your own money in the beginning and then use some vendor contribution and or strategic partnership contribution to offset some of those expenses. But what we found is we needed to spend about $500 in ads to generate one closed lead. And one closed lead in our market at about $250,000 average sales price is going to generate us about $6,000 in gross commission. Agent keeps $3,000, we keep $3,000, less the $500. That's a $2,500 net off a $500 spend. That's a 5x return. Now, this particular ROI is infinite, and it's infinite because we didn't spend the money to begin with. So we actually net a 6x off of the $500 spend because we're keeping $3,000. And so a lot of people think leads becomes the challenge. And for us, always and forever, it's not been the leads. It's been people willing to work the leads. It's really hard to find agents willing to WORK. And if you're running a team right now and you're distributing leads, I don't think you'll disagree. And this is the whole reason we created our keynote and our coaching company, Elite Real Estate Systems, the keynote being class, culture, leads, accountability, systems, and strategies, because we determined exactly what it was going to take to help businesses grow and scale and dominate in their marketplace. And everything we teach is applicable today. And we're still doing it and having a lot of success with it. Right now, we're generating over 2,000 leads a month. Again, continuing to be paid for by strategic partnerships. And the best way to partner, and the third way to partner, is in joint ventures or JVs, or you start the company from scratch, which is what I did. So we don't own a home inspection company. We still have a strategic partnership with a local firm. We do not own a home warranty company. We still have a strategic partnership with a local firm. But we do own our own mortgage company, our own title company, and our own insurance company. And those three entities do help share in the marketing expenses through strategic partnerships, which is ironic because now we are robbing Peter to pay Paul, which is fine because it's part of our overall marketing strategy. So those are the ways you zero-based marketing expenses for those naysayers out there that say it's impossible that his overhead is only 10%. We are offsetting it by creating partnerships. And those are win-win partnerships, under promise, over deliver, and support your vendors, lenders, strategic partners as much as possible. All right, let's switch gears into broker fees, transaction fees, broker commission, whatever you want to call them. Starting in 2000, I'll throw 8, maybe 7, I was at a local indie firm called NP Dodge. And while at that firm, they decided to institute a new rule where they needed to keep all their files in an offset location. All the physical files, I think we still have to keep them for like 7 years. And they said they were going to start charging $100 per transaction because they had to help, raise some funds to be able to pay for this offsite location. I don't know if it's a true story, not calling them out, but that's what they told us. So at the point that they told us that, I said, well, what if I charge $200 and I keep the other $100 to cover my overhead expenses, my admin fees, my admin costs, which we all obviously have those. And they said, we don't care. You can charge anything you want over $100 as long as it's justifiable and you treat everybody the same way. So we started charging $200, no problem. People had no issue with it. Anyone that challenges the idea, I say, well, what's the biggest holdup? And I usually find agents are over explaining or they don't think that it's fair. Well, show me a business that doesn't have an admin fee, either literally as a line item or built into the cost of the product sold. Every business does. Even like you go buy a car, there's a transaction fee, a processing fee, whatever you want to call it. And so that's what this is. And my intention when we started charging it was to offset or zero-base my admin cost. And we started charging all the way up to $600 on the buy, which is what we charge today at KW Elite, our brokerage, and $900 on the sell. Now we've charged all the way up to $999, but we were able to get that cost down a little bit. We're at $900 on the listing, $600 on the buy side. If a team has a full-time admin themselves, they only have to pay the brokerage $300, but they still have to charge the client $6, and then they get to keep the difference, or $9, and then they get to keep the difference. But everybody has to offer what we would call elite services, and it's contract to close. It's true contract to close. So an agent in our world doesn't have to focus on having an admin person that runs with the contract, schedules the closing, schedules the home inspection, schedules the walkthrough, puts the sign in the yard, puts the lockbox on, puts the lockbox off, takes all these extra little steps. They just pay $900 on the listing and $600 on the buy side, and we take care of all of that for them. Now, what's nice is on the buy side, you can have the agent can collect the fee from the buyer of the property. So when someone purchases a home and they ask the seller to cover up to, let's say, $10,000 in closing costs, prepaids, escrows, insurance, and any other allowable expenses, we just write in there broker fee, and then that's just part of the buyer's mortgage. On the sell side, it hurts the seller a little bit more because, of course, they're paying a 5 or 6 or whatever % commission plus the $900, and they'll always ask, well, why is there an additional fee? And we say, well, that additional fee is built in for all the contract to close services. It's part of our value add. And then if they say, well, why doesn't that come with the commission? Then we just say, well, that's not built into the commission. It's a separate fee. And you just stare at them and justify it and believe that the fee is justifiable. And if there's an instance, which happens 2% of the time, where the agent can't collect, then we collect it from the agent. So if the client won't pay it, then the agent pays it. And the agent has no problem paying it, because if they weren't paying it, they'd have to hire an admin to do the work anyways. So it's a moot point. So it's a USP, a unique selling proposition, to provide our agents with a full-on admin contract to close support system. And we've taught them, trained them, coached them on how to collect the fee that covers that service. And then, of course, there's a little bit of profit margin built in for the brokerage. And we were able to build in so much profit. We generated over $400,000 net last year, and we've been doing that consistently over the last 5 years, that we were able to offset almost all of our admin positions. Our operations manager, our success manager, of course, our contract to close coordinators, our marketing directors. And so going back to the beginning of the podcast episode today, I shared with you that I was on a stage and I got challenged because I said 70% of our revenue went to agents, 10% went to overhead, and I got to keep net 20. And people that know the business are like, well, how do you only have 10%? Well, there you go. We were able to offset our $10,000 a month marketing expense through creating strategic partnerships, vendor relationships, and having ownership and or joint ventures in ancillary businesses. And then zero base all of our, most of our admin expenses through broker fees, transaction fees, whatever you want to call them, to the tune of about $400,000 a year. So a net total of $500,000, which would obviously increase that overall overhead expense to that 25 to 30% margin. So lots of fun coming up in the month of June, where we're going to dive deep into these two main topics to help the teams we coach at Elite Real Estate Systems learn how to zero base their expenses as well, and implement the strategies that have proven themselves over the last 10 years to help us scale and dominate the real estate market in the Omaha area and across the country. And would love to invite anyone that hasn't learned about Elite Real Estate Systems to jump on a demo call with us. We have some special promotions we're running right now for anyone that's wanting to jump in and start on the team leader coaching product. We also do agent training for all of your agents Mondays and Wednesdays, the team leaders on Thursdays. We have investor training on Tuesdays, and we just launched ancillary trainings for mortgage companies, title companies, and insurance companies if you want to make those available to your vendor and lender partners free of charge. For more information about Elite Real Estate Systems or any upcoming events, please go out to growwithers.com. And be sure to select whatever information you're interested in learning more about. Would love to see you in Omaha at an upcoming team building workshop. And until further ado, hope to see you at the next podcast. Talk to you soon.